Dr. Jeffrey MacDonald, a former captain in the Army Green Berets, is serving 3 life sentences for the murders of his wife and 2 young daughters in 1970. The murders, of which he maintains his innocence, are the subject of the book and TV movie Fatal Vision, which aired earlier this week. Yesterday afternoon, I talked with Jeffrey MacDonald. He is in prison in Bastrop, Texas, and I was here in New York, and I began by asking for his reaction to Fatal Vision.
Oh, I thought it was awful. It was extremely depressing. It brought back a lot of memories, but there was a lot of anger attached to my feelings because it was so inaccurate.
You have said that your life and your marriage was really ideal. And yet in the book and in the movie, we heard a different story. We heard of drugs. We heard of extramarital affairs. What is the truth? What is the case?
The truth is I had a very normal, warm relationship with my wife, Colette, and my children. There was never any drug abuse. That's absolutely a fabrication of Joe McGinness.
So the whole idea that you may have been in a drug-induced state of hallucination and done these killings, perhaps not have been aware of it or imagined these other people, in your mind is totally false.
It's absolutely false, and it's very malicious because the evidence is crystal clear on this point. I was examined in the hospital by upwards of 6 physicians. I had a psychiatric examination, and I repeat, I had blood and urine tests.
And they did test for amphetamines?
That is correct. The information in Fatal Vision is absolutely false.
All right. Back to what your life was like. You say that we heard about extramarital affairs. Were these going on?
I am not a perfect person. I'm not sure I know of anyone who is a perfect person. There is no question that I had a date with a girl in San Antonio while I was married. When I was asked about it, I freely admitted that. The implication that there was a struggle within our marriage over this is absolutely false. I was a soldier. I was away from home in basic training. The date did occur. Nothing untoward happened. She has given a signed statement to that effect. The woman that I had this date with, which of is totally inconsequential nature, and the maliciousness in the false presentation of so-called evidence in the book and movie is just simply that. It's false.
You have so many people who know you and who have been so convinced all the way along of your innocence. And one of those people was Joe McGinness, the author of the book. What could make someone who knows you so intimately, not on the surface, but intimately, change his mind?
Well, first, Joe doesn't know me intimately, and his book proves that. The only person who has ever said things about me that Joe McGinness has said is Joe McGinness. He basically interviewed a few of my friends. He knows what they've said. It was all positive. There was no negative attached to that. He did not interview many of the people he portrays in the book. We have statements from many of the people in the book that he portrays and misportrays, and they were never interviewed by Joe McGinness.
Why do you think he did this?
Oh, I think Mr. McGinness took the safe way out. I think he waited until the Supreme Court made their turn down of my last appeal, or so-called last appeal, and he then told me in a letter that he rewrote the book, he added 100 pages, and he changed the book substantially.
Did you not sign an agreement beforehand that allowed him to write really anything that he found, good or bad?
I did sign an agreement with Joe McGinness. The agreement was for Joe McGinness to portray truthfully my life. He has not done that. He has portrayed my life with mistruths, with misrepresentations, falsehoods, and absolutely fabricated events. He doesn't have a release to portray an evil man where there is no evil, and that's what he has done.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about Freddie Kassab, your father-in-law. He, at the beginning, was one of your biggest supporters, your biggest defenders, but of course, ultimately, the one man that put you to prison. In your mind, where do you think he went wrong?
Well, you know, I have a lot of grief over this whole episode and the loss of my family, and it took me maybe 11 years to really come to grips with it. I dealt with it differently than Freddie. I tried to rebuild my life and build a new life in California, which apparently did me no good in the end. Freddie chose to handle his grief in a different fashion. I was method of handling their grief. They're entitled to that. But I think what happened in the end was they needed a solution to give them some peace of mind, and I became the only available solution when the Army basically affirmed to them that there was no substance to this group of intruders being in my house, when in fact we find out 13 years later that they buried the evidence of those people having been in the house that night. And I think the real tragedy is that they have now, after supporting me in a very nice fashion during the Article 32 hearing, they've now turned against me very publicly and taken a very extreme stand. And when I'm vindicated, I think they're going to have difficulty dealing with that also, because that's going to be a third change. I feel sorry for that, but I can't help it.
Do you still feel that you are going to get out?
Well, I think the new evidence is so substantial that I think everyone working on the case at this point, including, I presume, even some of the prosecution, understand that there eventually will be a new trial and hopefully a verdict that will vindicate me. I believe that at this point. I think that in 1979, there were some beginnings of evidence to understand this group that was in my house. In 1984, it's a very different story. But confessions, one of the men, one of the women. We have 28 witnesses seeing these people go to my house, come from the house. They saw Helena Stokely in the bloody clothing. They heard admissions of guilt on many occasions. And I think that with evidence of this strength, including the suppressed forensic evidence that the government withheld from us at trial, I think I will eventually be vindicated.